All right, so this is an interesting development. I managed to get myself lost out here in Borinda, California. This tiny little burg. Another good example of the elevated roadbed. And of course, more of the cows. All right, so as I hopefully work my way towards Borinda, Kelly and I were up here a few weeks ago. We went to visit some friends up in the foothills just east of here. And I have to say, this time of year, for about probably 3 to 4, I'll call it glorious months out of the year, the foothills of Central California are absolutely beautiful. While I was up here, we went through the community of Raymond, which we'll be going through later today. And Raymond is an interesting community. We'll get more into that later. However, what I discovered while in Raymond, which I had not known before, is that at one time, the Southern Pacific Railroad, which runs through the Central Valley, well, today it's called the Union Pacific Railroad, but back then it was the Southern Pacific Railroad. Southern Pacific had a small branch that went off from Borinda all the way up to the community of Raymond, and which I think is a distance of about 30 miles. I'll see if I can find that and put it in the notes for you. But that was the first railroad access to Yosemite National Park. In fact, that went from I think was it 1876? I'll have to look that up. But that actually predates the Yosemite Valley Railroad. So I went home after that trip and I got on Google Earth, which I love to spend too much time on. And what I found out was there are still some parts of the old railroad right-of-way that are visible today. Not much. So here I am doing another one of my infamous disclaimers. I don't know how much we're going to see of that today, but I'm going to drive as much of the route as is still accessible, which again is not much. And then again, we'll wind up in Raymond, and I want to show you that's a cool little town with some interesting history as well, which makes it unique from most California foothill communities. And then from there, we're going to go a little farther east, up off of Ben Hur Road, and I want to show you another an old historic ranch with some really interesting historical features. So hang with us through the video, and we'll get there as well. Welcome to Borinda, you all. This is it. There's an old mill over here, but that looks like that's been here since the time of our little railroad spur that we're talking about. So there's our main rail line going through now the Union Pacific line, back then the Southern Pacific line going through Central California. Okay, if you look down the line here, I'm sure our Borinda station was somewhere off in this area here. You see the rise in the earth right there. I'm thinking maybe that was it. Pure speculation, of course, but I like to think that was it. But it would make sense because what I've learned looking at Google Earth is our rail line did go off. You see that orchard off in the distance? Our rail line did go off through that orchard. Well, probably wasn't an orchard back in those days. And more or less went due east off in this direction out here. So is this it? Maybe. All right, Massa Street. Look at that old water fill station. And off over here, loading dock. And the big pump motors have been removed, but the main panel's still there. Okay, I want to read something to you here. This is interesting. So, and they're speaking of the old railroad bed, which we're going to go look for today. And this gives me a little encouragement. Listen to this. The raised bed for the Southern Pacific Railroad is still visible, and visitors can picture the train rolling in twice a day, taking tourists to their stagecoaches for the adventure into Yosemite National Park. And that's how this worked, is they took you from the Central Valley all the way into Raymond. There you disembarked and got on stagecoaches, and then it took you into the southern entrance into Yosemite National Park, which is Highway 41 today. Raymond was the terminal for the Southern Pacific Railroad from 1886 until the tracks were pulled up in the 1940s. Besides being the main tourist hub for Yosemite National Park from 1886 until 1907, Raymond was also the main freight and commerce center for the San Joaquin Valley and surrounding foothills. Ranchers, loggers, farmers, and merchants all received and shipped their goods through Raymond by trail and wagon. The Raymond Knolls granite quarries also used the rail to transport the famous Sierra White granite to San Francisco and all over the United States. And by the way, that quarry is still operating today from what I'm reading. I'll do a little plug for my Yosemite Valley Railroad series. So I think there were nine installments for that if you want to go look at those. But this is fascinating for me, being just kind of a history nerd, but also a railroad nerd. Well, I had no idea, I'm kind of embarrassed to say it, I had no idea this rail line even existed. And it actually predates the Yosemite Valley Railroad and predates the Yosemite Valley Railroad insofar as being the main rail hub going into Yosemite National Park. So you live and learn. All right, let's head on up the hill and see what we can find. All right, so off to our right here, that we're looking more or less west towards Berenda and Highway 99, where we just left. That is the old rail bed. It's obviously it's been kind of dissed down and it's not level anymore, but that's the old rail bed looking back towards Berenda. And then it kind of sweeps off over in this direction here. Now, right through, you see that cluster of trees? The old rail bed went right through there. Of course, that's all private property and it's not accessible today, but that's our road bed. And then our rail line, the old road bed goes on. You can actually see it, some of it right there at the edge of this orchard. Basically, it kind of dissects this property right there. All right, so we're going to look for Road 26, and then we're going to turn left or north, and it should go right across the old right-of-way. Let's see what we can find here. Basically, behind this, you can see the orchard over here. Off to the right, you got the field in front of us. You can see a little bit of dirt. If you look, you see this post over here, on this white post on the left, power pole on the right. Right between those, where that orchard is, you can see some dirt there. Hopefully you can see it. That is the old right-of-way. And I can't tell you that if that's the old right-of-way or not, because it's no longer elevated. It may have been disunder, but it would have been right through this area somewhere. I know 60 years is a long time, but at the same time, you know, that's a relatively short period of time in the timeline of history. And wow, just how much of it's gone. Okay, let's. I'm not sure. I gotta look at my notes. I'm not sure where we're going next. Let me figure this out. We'll continue on down the road. All right, I just want to point something out for the geology nerds out there, myself included, of course. We're in an interesting area here in California, but there's this transitional period from the edge of the flatlands of the Central Valley into the foothills here in Central California. And we're in that transitional area right here. And you can always see that because as you see here, the terrain starts to roll. You start getting these like low-lying rolling hills like we have right here in front of us. So we're right at the base of the foothills, and then you can see in front of us, off in the distance there, there's the low-lying mountains of the Sierra Nevadas. So fascinating little piece of geology for those of us so inclined to enjoy such things. And getting back to our railroad story, we're coming onto Road 600, and this orchard here basically was planted right over the top of the old road bed. But we'll get to that up here in a little bit. This is going to be a really fascinating drive. And and I'm looking forward to our next stop. Okay, y'all, there it is. There's the old roadbed. All right, you see the fence line in front of us? Just beyond that, you see the yellow poppies there? Those poppies are growing right atop the old roadbed. Again, we're getting out into the eastern part of the valley and right at the base of the foothills. You can see how green it is this time of year. By the way, this is late March. All right, here you can really see the elevation of the old roadbed right here across this low-lying area. How about that, huh? Wow. All right, so there it is, you guys, right there. You can barely see it through the sea of grass here, but it's there. And I'm thinking that had to be pretty exciting, man, back in the day, to be leaving the Central Valley, coming up this way. You start seeing the rolling hills, see the mountains in front of you. Things are starting to look promising. Check this out. I think they know I'm an animal lover. Another good example of the elevated roadbed. And of course, more of the cows. Wondering why I'm looking without providing a snack. There's nothing. I'm thinking maybe there was a bridge here at one time across this stream here, but I'm not seeing any evidence of that. And then here the roadbed continues right there in front of us. Wow, what a really cool train ride that would have been. Man, how pretty is this? Yeah, what do you make of this, you guys? This obviously was something of substance right here. And the railroad, by the way, you can see the right of way coming off over here. Would have crossed right in front, not right in front of us, but right behind this structure here. So what do you think this was? And I'm looking at the slab over here. You see those little curved sections on each side? I'm wondering if that was a set of rollers for some doors. I don't know. I don't know. If some of you know, let me know. What a cool find. And by the way, I should mention that here's a cool little piece of information. The area we're at right now, this is known as Dalton. How about that? Dalton. That's definitely kind of a throwback to the old West, eh? The rail continues up through that tree line and kind of does a real big curve north. And it goes a good distance beyond where we're at now. So that is northernmost point before it basically turns south and kind of comes back to where we're at here in Dalton. The railroad crosses another cool little area called Rawls Gulch, and I tried to find information on Rawls Gulch. Couldn't find anything. And now, roughly at the area of Rawls Gulch, the rail turns south and then rejoins us here on Road 600, which we're headed to next. Okay, so we've come about an additional 7 miles east on Road 600 going towards Raymond. We're probably just maybe a few miles out of Raymond, but look at this. And Road 600 is right in front of us. That right in front of you, you can hopefully see it there. That is the roadbed of the Southern Pacific Knowles-Raymond branch of the railroad. I love that. That's cool. It's so, I don't know why it's so much fun finding this stuff, but I feel like a kid. Here's a really good view of the roadbed. Again, we're looking west here. I kind of backtrack a little bit to show you this. Look at that. This one looks like it's been obviously repurposed by probably some ranchers up here. I like that little drainage area below the roadbed right there. Look at that, guys. That's cool. There's more of it coming off the hill there. Now it's off to our right over here. And there it is right in front of us, y'all, right behind that pole. Wow. And down in that low area, right down here by these rocks. You can see it going off straight ahead behind those rocks. All right, I found a spot to pull over. Look at this right here, this old roadbed right here in front of us. All right, then we're looking west, coming into town. And then it cuts right between these rocks. And look right in front of us here. It comes around this bend. And heads off towards Raymond. That's I'm gonna say it. That's cool. By the way, look at this out here. Let's see if I can get some photo of that. Look at those poppies out there. The poppies are popping, or beginning to anyway. But look how pretty this is up here. And again, we're just in the foothills, just headed towards the Sierras. Sierras are up this way here, kind of obscured by the clouds today. Now that little home has been around for a period of time. Look at that. Oh, wait. Yeah, that's that place is abandoned. Look at that. Oh, wow, look at this. Look at this. What is the history of that? Wow. Oh, what do we got going here? Look at this. Hills Pride Inn. Oh, look at that. Look at this, you guys. I want to show you this. I'll try and keep the camera smooth, but there's the rock quarry up on the side of the hill. Look at that. And the way they do this is, I'm not sure what all the terminology is, but they'll cleave those rocks right off the side. Do you see how they have all the flat faces on them, flat surfaces? They'll actually cut into the rock and then basically shear it straight down. Or I call it cleaving it off, like kind of like slicing cheese off a brick of cheese. And that's what they do right there. Look at that. What a cool operation. And guess what? I know it's still in operation just by looking at this, but I mentioned it earlier in the video, but this is still, or it's been operating for I don't know how long now, but wow. There it is, y'all. Wow. And how curious is it that we're actually finding palm trees out here? You can probably see that. I'll take a photo to get a better close-up of it. You can probably see that big crane up there on the side of the mountain. But just a fascinating operation, man. Look at all this, y'all. I just noticed it's coming back down the hill towards Raymond. There's an old, I'm thinking, is it a railroad bed here? A right-of-way? Look at this. And I've been following that for maybe a quarter mile. And then, see it right here, right there. And it's headed towards Raymond. It's obviously, you can see it right out through here. It's obviously another railroad bed. Okay, so I found out Raymond does have a museum, and I got really lucky because it's only open on Sunday afternoons from like noon until 4 or 5. I got here about 2 o'clock on a Sunday and went inside and had a great tour. The curator here on duty, guy was cool, awesome, got a lot of information. I mean, we talked about a lot of things. But with regard to Raymond, I did find out a few things. One of the things that I thought was most interesting is we stopped earlier and we were looking at that concrete foundation. That's where roads 600 and 603 came together. If you remember, I was talking about they look like there may have been a station there, but also maybe some silos. What I found out was he told me there was a train station there, and also there were 2 large ranches there. They're cattle ranches. However, one of them is as large as 5,000 acres. However, what I found out was, what he told me, was that on those ranches they actually had copper in those rocks that kind of sit upright. A lot of copper in those rocks. However, prior to the railroad, they did not actually mine that copper because it wasn't economically feasible to get it down to the valley and transport it where it needed to go. So when they built the railroad in 1886, they started mining copper. And that continued all the way until, now this is what's interesting, the rail operation to Raymond basically stopped in 1940-41, and they basically pulled the rails at that point. However, they only pulled them back to that site we were at where that slab was because that operation continued, that operation being the removal of the copper, that operation continued until late into the 1940s. All right, and I just got a quick stop here in the general store. What a cool, really cool old school place. This one was built, I believe, in 1890. And from what I read, that's not actually the original, but again, that has been here since 1890. Now, the museum I just visited, that is the original home or original building here in Raymond. Now, that actually is the Charles Miller House. It's the first and oldest home here in Raymond, and that actually was built and lived in by the first Southern Pacific Railroad and stagecoach agent here in Raymond. All right, so I mentioned the general stores about 1890. The Miller home predates that, although I didn't get a specific date on it. But also there was I think it was called the Shaw Brothers General Merchandise Store. Today it's a bar, and although it looks like it's been shut down, but this was built in 1891. So this is also one of the earliest buildings here in Raymond. Yeah, look at that. Oh yeah, for rent. I guess it is unoccupied. Yeah, so this is Raymond, y'all. I gotta say, it's a cool town. It's a very cool little town. I asked the curator, I said, how many people live here today approximately? He says, well, he goes, nobody has a real absolute number, but he said if you could scare everybody out of their homes and everybody out of the hills, he says you might get 400 people. That's how, oh, look at this old building. Look at that. And I mentioned that because at its peak, he said there were right around 4,000 people that lived in this area at one time. So think about that, man. This place was hopping back in the day. All right, so we're back on the main road. I want to show it. So here's our caboose, and here's where the rail went in Raymond. So the station was not here. The station was a little ways down, kind of off in this area over here under this tree, more or less. And then the round table or turntable was off kind of in this area as well. So they could turn the engine around and then, of course, head back down the hill. All right, so earlier we were at the quarry. Now, what's interesting is the way he explained it to me was that they would use a turntable here in town if they needed to go to the quarry. They'd come into Raymond, detach from the train itself, turn the engine around, head back down the hill a little bit, and then they would literally back the engine into the quarry where they would hook up to the loaded flatbeds or hoppers that they had there, pull back out on the main line, come back up, reconnect anything they had here in Raymond, and then head on down the hill towards Berinda there in the Central Valleys. Something I didn't mention about when I was talking about the rock quarry. Let me share this now. A couple of cool, interesting facts. I was told this is like the densest granite that we have in the U.S. And he gave me some weights on that, but it's super dense. So it's very, very valuable granite. By the way, that quarry's been in operation since 1890. And even to this day, that's some of the most valuable granite in the world. And so that basically gets exported throughout the world. There were 2 lions that were carved out of this granite. And he had, I forgot to get pictures of them in the museum. What a knucklehead. And they actually were on exhibit there in the city of San Francisco. This is prior to the 1906 quake. The 1906 quake occurs, the lions are damaged, so they contact the quarry, the guy who carved the lions originally, and said, hey, can you come repair these? The operators at the quarry and the guy who carved the original said, hey, we can do better, we're going to carve you 2 more. So they actually carved them 2 more lions, and those were sent to San Francisco. You know, I was asking as well, is there any chance that this quarry would ever be shut down? And right now, the word is, hey, the market's still good. You know, they have a very unique product. Again, some of the best, if not the best and most dense granite in the world. So as long as the market stays strong, they're not shutting down. And that they have enough property, get this part, this is interesting. So they have enough property available that they, at their current rate of production, they could still continue operating for probably 500 years. I guess that's some kind of job security, right? All right, let's head towards Mariposa, and I have one more stop I want to make and show you guys these old, something very unique to the California foothills. And that is the what are known here has always been known as the Chinese walls. So let's get there and I'll show you what I'm talking about. Just kind of creeping along Ben Hur Road, and man, look, I mean, not a tree in sight, which is interesting, but look how green it is through here. Look how beautiful and green this is. There's still water down there, which makes sense considering we've had a pretty good amount of rain this last week. All right, this is a beautiful piece of road right here, man. Look at this. But look at this, y'all. Wow. And this is probably as good a place as any to segue into our next story. Oh wow, I just noticed another view. Wow. Okay, I apologize for that interruption. That's a photographer's curse. So what I learned from our, and I kind of had an idea this was still the case, but talking to the curator at the museum, there's still a lot of really large active cattle ranches up in this part of California. So that's good to hear. In other words, we still have some real cowboying going on here. And you can see it. He said that's actually still a pretty good size employer up here in the foothills, at least this part of the Central Valley, or the Central California foothills, which leads to our next story. We're going to head, it's right up the road here, to the historic Quick Ranch, which has been around since what I read, about the 1850s. And it was originally built by a doctor. Nobody seems to know a doctor of what, but that's kind of been lost to history. However, that was purchased by that ranch was purchased by Morgan Quick, and who actually was from New York and came here to California as part of the gold rush, for the gold rush. But what I want to show you is he actually hired a Chinese crews to build some walls. And here in California, we always heard them referenced as the Chinese rock walls. And while not all the rock walls here in foothill country were built by the Chinese, the majority of them were. And what we were able to confirm here through documentation is that these were built by the ones I'm going to show you were built by the Chinese. Now, what's significant? These walls are all over the foothills here in California. There are over 4 miles of these rock walls on the Quick Ranch, and that makes them the largest continuous section of rock wall not just here in California, but also here in the United States, so I guess probably even the world. Okay, here I go again, making you feel like you're in a history class, right? But this is interesting. Let me read this to you. In 1862, Morgan Quick had a rock wall built. This not only kept the livestock in, but cleaned the fields of rocks. Cattle, horses, hogs, turkeys, and chickens were raised over the years. The family grew their own barley and wheat and harvested wild oat hay. Now, getting to the Chinese workers. Chinese workers from Mormon Bar built the fence under the direction of a Chinese boss. Each worker had to complete a rod and a half of fence a day, which is roughly about 24, almost 25 feet. To receive, and they needed to do that to receive the day's wage of 25 cents. Morgan also agreed to feed the workers and bought a herd of hogs at about 1.5 cents a pound to provide pork. The Chinese boss was paid $1.75 a rod, which is about 16.5 feet. He sat under an umbrella and kept count of each foot of wall on his abacus. The total cost of the wall was $6,000. Like, wow, that surprised me. That's a chunk back in that day, even today, I suppose. Most of the original wall is still standing, although other parts of the ranch remain. One of Morgan Quick's greatest monuments is the rock wall. So there it is. Let's all right, I'll quit looking at the scenery and let's go look at this, look at the ranch. Man, it just keeps getting better. Look at this. Oh, wow. Look at this. Here it is, y'all, the Quick Ranch. You can see some of that rock wall right there in front of you. And here it is, Quick Ranch, Ben Hur Road. That wall has been around since, these walls, I should say, have been around since about 1860. And again, these are about 4 miles in length. Man, I'd love to stop right there and get a photo, but there's nowhere to pull over. Man, that's pretty right there. Look at that. What a photo. And I can't stop. No shoulder. And again, like I said earlier, these rock walls are all over the Sierra Nevada foothills here in California, particularly the central part of the state. But again, this is the longest one of them all. Again, over 4 miles in length total. Okay, finally found the shoulder of the road. You can see some of them down there in front of you, down in the valley. This section comes along right here. And then right here up the side of this hill, look at this, where these cows are. Man, that would have been a great photo if I could have got it. That might not be a bad photo right there, but I'm not looking into that sky like I was down below. But look at that. 160 something years old. Wow. Well, you all, the sun is going behind the mountain. It's getting cold. The wind is still going. And yet I still don't want to leave this place. Man, this is special. What a beautiful area. Beautiful scenery, lots of history, some very unique history to the California foothill country, and in the presence of some very pleasant, polite cows. And a really beautiful old oak tree. Based on the cows out here, I'm saying the Quick Ranch is still active. That's good news. I don't know if they live on the property, but they're still operating it. And I was going to say own it, but now that we know there's cattle here, I'd say they're still operating it. What a place. All right, I have one more stop up here I want to show you. There's a kind of a distant view of the ranch, but look at that. Oh man, they're definitely got to get some photos of that. Some of the original buildings still remain. Ah, that is something. All All right, let me get some photos of this real quick so I can show you before we lose any more light. All right, we're right at the edge of the ranch property here, and I want to show you this. Look up here. There's some of that wall right there. We're going to stop up here, get a little closer view, but that's it. And that's probably about as close as I want to get right now. But look at that. Such a really interesting piece of history, such a unique piece of history. And in such a, just a beautiful location. I just now saw that. There's the Quick Ranch complex right out there right in the center of your frame. Fascinating, isn't it? Okay, y'all, that is going to conclude today's video. I think today was a good example of how, you know, one discovery leads to another discovery, which leads to another discovery. So it's kind of nice. I knew about Raymond. I knew about the Quick Ranch. However, I didn't know that there was a rail line until recently between Brenda and both of them. So here we are. So that'll conclude the video. I'm not sure where we're going next. I think Idria, I keep saying we're going to do Idria. Idria is on the horizon. I talked to my partner on that. We're going to put that one together real soon. But I'm not sure that'll be the next video. But either way, we'll see where this all leads us, right? So I appreciate y'all tagging along. Hope you enjoyed the video, and we will see you next time.